Gee, so we're getting a few people coming along. I didn't know how many people would turn up because I sent out the email on Thanksgiving, and it went to a lot of people's work addresses, so they didn't get the email. So bad timing on my part, but not to worry. Well, if there's not too many of us, it'll be cozier and it'll be easier to actually get to everyone while I'm learning how to run all of this. Yeah, I had a couple of guys who had questions straight off the bat. They'd emailed me ahead. Are any of those guys here at the moment? Not yet. Not yet. Okay, no, that's all right. We'll get to that. There were some pretty good questions too that would actually allow us to really get stuck into things. I see a few of you guys have got your microphones muted, so I won't be able to hear. Sorry, by the look of it. But anyway, we'll figure it all out. Yeah. So how's everyone getting on with their shooting? All right?
A lot better since we hooked up with you a few years ago. Although I didn't engage in your services, I learned a heck of a lot from your multi-volume books and also your website and things like that. That made a tremendous step forward for me with all my arsenal of rifles and things.
Good. I'm glad to hear that it's working out. That's the thing. It's being able to deliver it in a way that's useful, isn't it? It's you want to actually get some benefit out of it, not just have somebody waffling at you. Yeah, yeah. It's certainly.
You know what? I just started reading the Long Range Practical Guide to Long Range, and it's been entertaining to read at the very least. And sure appreciate somebody coming out with some good information like this. And I'm just getting started in this guide. I've been shooting since I was a kid, but
Yeah.
you know, as far as training, had some Marine Corps training, which was when they were still shooting peep sight out to 500 yards,
Yeah.
which was awesome at the time. It didn't seem like much because, you know, that you lived and breathed that for a while, but
Yeah.
it sure is nice to, on the civilian side, be able to go out and relax and, I don't know, kind of relearn it again almost.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So you cut out there for a bit. Is the shooting book that you're reading at the moment?
Yeah, your practical guide to long range shooting.
Yeah.
I've just started.
Okay, yeah. It starts out pretty basic, and then it's what I've tried to do is just slowly start introducing the math topics, because it's all too intimidating at first. You want to just sort of build your way into it slowly and build your confidence up out to 300 or 400 yards, and then start looking at the software and so forth, because that once you start getting into that, then that's a whole nother ball of wax. So
yeah.
So just I really think that 100 yards is where it's at to begin with. If you can just get everything down pat, and for some people they don't want to, they sort of dabble a bit. They might hold the forend or something, but then not use a bipod instead at the bench, or just because I think sometimes it's difficult where they live and how the range is set up, whatever. But if you can just try and strip the whole lot away and start completely over and give it a good length of time, then finally it all starts to pay off. In the beginning, it sort of doesn't make sense, especially when you start field work and a backpack seems so much more unstable versus a bipod. But if you give it a go, give it some good time, and then you start seeing those benefits. But a good example that would be over the backpack. There's always a little bit of a wobble, especially when you first get going and at the range. If the conditions aren't perfect, if your setup's not quite right and you're still learning, there's this little bit of a wobble. Whereas with a bipod, you can be more rigid, on target. But the problem is that once the rifle goes off, if it's a very high-powered rifle, you can get quite a bit of bounce. And then, of course, if you change terrain, that bounce varies depending on the terrain, and you can never really preload it the way you think you can. And there's a lot that can go wrong. But with the backpack, if you can overcome that wobble by just letting it actually do its thing, so it's just moving around, And if you just pull through on that trigger slowly and just allow it to, so instead of waiting for it to be at that perfect moment and then just quickly pull, if you just allow it to float and then just gently pull through and then let the bullet go where it will go, what you tend to find is that the whole group tightens up. And so at first it still seems counterintuitive, with the bipod at the range, it just seems so much more sturdy. But again, if you can just stick with it, then once you get out into the field and you start getting into these more awkward shooting positions, that's when it starts to pay off, because you're looking where you want to shoot, you're allowing the shot to go in there, and you're just pulling slowly, and invariably it always works out much better than someone who sees the animal and the animal pauses just for that moment and everything feels right, and they think, oh shit, I've only got this 1 or 2 seconds to get the shot away, and they yank the trigger and it turns into a gut shot or something like that. So yeah, it's a slow process, but you've got to stick through it, even with some of those seeming difficulties, such as the wobble. Yeah.
No, and I'm just in a part of the book where you talk about just starting with the 22 or an air rifle, and it's all about the basics. And once you have that foundation, and building off of that, and that's what I started working on with my daughters. Actually, is just that. Not worrying about the target so much, but more about getting comfortable with the rifle and open sight.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, that also goes for sitting and standing shots. You just can't beat the 22 for that. Just for actually learning how to shoot at normal ranges, close ranges, that sort of carry on. You cannot beat the 22. Yeah. I tend to notice I go downhill if I'm not using the 22 that much. I go downhill with my standing shots. I mean, I can get by, but it's just not as pretty as it would be if I had been hunting small game with the 22 or just plinking with it. Yeah.
No, in situations I found myself 2 years ago going to take an offhand shot with an AR 458 SOCOM.
Oh yeah.
And even at, I was running up the hill, got to the top of the hill, and even I was only like 35 yards away, and I just couldn't gather myself. But that offhand, real thing, if you don't practice it.
As soon as your breathing's up, that's it. You just start to get in trouble. Yeah, that's right. You don't have to be shooting that far at all. Yeah, and then of course with the AR, you've got a bit of a slow lock time there as well. So so it goes on. Oh goodness.
Yes, Nathan, as long as you're talking about bipods, I got one specific question. And he referred to the book about long-range shooting, which I highlighted and read thoroughly, actually 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Because I found that even though I got a large variety of large caliber rifles from 3 different manufacturers, I found from reading your book, and this is probably a tip for the others, is that other than one rifle, which had its inherent problems in the rifle, which was a Ruger M77, most of the problems I was having with my others was me, not the rifle. And I learned a lot from your book about how to properly use a sling, especially. I'd never thought about that. And then, all of the other things that are in your book, the tips on how to steady yourself and do everything, made a tremendous improvement in all my other rifles except one I had to have it worked on. I can tell you more about that, but I do have one specific question on the bipod, though. I think it was, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was that book. In the bipod area, it recommended not using a bipod on a Tikka T3 Lite. And maybe you can expand on it, because my go-to rifle for elk hunting, you always have that one go-to rifle, right? Is a 300 WSM in a Tikka T3 Lite, because I'm a very light framed guy, lightweight myself, and the heavier weighted rifles, even though I do have some, I just couldn't handle them like I can that Tikka T3 Lite. It recommended not using a bipod. Maybe you could just expand on that for a moment.
Okay, so with especially for that rifle, your Tika, the light rifle has got 2 pressure points halfway down the forend, and they help to keep that barrel centered, and they help lock the whole thing in place. But if you put a bipod under that and you start loading that bipod, you're actually starting to place different kind of stresses on those pressure points, and so that can cause the group to shift. And then in addition to that, it is a very lightweight rifle, and you're dealing with considerably high recoil with it. So yeah, if you do have a bipod on that particular rifle, it can lead to those kind of problems where you've got flyers high and to the right for a right-handed shooter, or to the left for a left-hand shooter, and they can be quite wide flyers. And so yeah, out at longer ranges especially, it can become quite a problem. So over here, guys will mitigate it by putting a suppressor on the rifle. That can work okay, but one of the issues there is that if the muzzle thread is very thin, very narrow, the muzzle will eventually swell. It will happen. And then you have the fluted variant. Well, that will just swell in the barrel anyway over time, with or without a suppressor. But yeah, the suppressor can help dampen things down a bit. So that is the usual setup you see over here: a bipod and a suppressor. But it's something you need to investigate and try from different field positions, because the Tika can shoot quite terribly, especially the 300 short magnum. That's a really good example of a rifle that has huge accuracy potential, but can shoot very, very poorly with the bipod on it. But one thing you might want to look at for that is a forend overmold. If you go to the importer's website for the US, you might see forend overmolds for it, and they're quite nice. They can help make the rifle a lot more comfortable to shoot, and they don't add a lot of weight to it. So if you do have a chance, have a look into that. It's a sleeve which slips over it, but it just widens it to more of like a beaver tail style. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can run a bipod with it. It just makes the forend a lot nicer to hold onto. But yeah, I mean, if you want to use a bipod, try it, but just keep in mind that the results you see at 100 yards may not be reflective of the results you achieve in the field. And I've been through this a number of times with that particular rifle in that caliber, so I have quite a bit of experience with it. Yeah, just experimentation is the key.
Excuse me, yeah, because of your recommendation, I don't have a bipod on it. I was curious about that. What I actually have used since I got it, and that's quite a few years ago, is a tripod trigger stick.
Okay.
Makes it real nice. But I mean, the reason I go to that rifle is, like you mentioned, that the accuracy, if used correctly and not put a bipod on it, is just fantastic accuracy. For somebody like me that's lightweight and needs a lightweight rifle, it is tremendous. I appreciate you elaborating on that, because I just wonder why.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something you could experiment with it, and one way to experiment with it would be to maybe just lay some shards of stone or something like that on the ground under it, and then just actually see what it's like if you were to go from soft ground to rock or so forth, and actually see those differences. You start experimenting with it with a bipod, you'll soon see what it can and can't do, and how the effect of your handholds are with it. But yeah, it can be a bit of a problem. If you can get away with a backpack, it is a bit easier on that particular rifle.
Yeah, I'll stick with my trigger sticks in the backpack.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
when you mentioned it briefly in your book, and I appreciate that's the kind of thing I find in your book, throughout the book, of little tips like that has just made a tremendous help to me on all my rifles.
Yeah.
Like I said, other than my one Ruger M77 that needed work,
Yeah.
all your tips in there just made a tremendous improvement, because the problems I was seeing was more me, and especially not ever having been comfortable using a sling, which I am now.
Yeah.
And some of your other tips have made a tremendous improvement in what I'm doing with all my rifles. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're most welcome. Thank you. Have we got anyone else with any questions they want to ask?
I've got a question, Nathan. By the way, so we had emailed a few weeks ago about loading the 200 grain ELDX in the 30-06.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your help with that. I've been just brand new to reloading here, so
Okay.
I started reloading. I've got 12 rounds done, and I'm working up different charges.
Yeah.
And when I get to 54.9 grains, which is in the Hornady book, I mean, I'm still below book max.
Yeah.
A fair amount.
Which powder, sorry?
What's that?
Which powder?
Super performance.
Oh, okay. So you're up to 54. Yep, carry on.
Yeah, and I'm finding that the powder's coming up pretty much to the case neck. And is there a way that I can settle it down, or
Which brand
make
of
it fit?
which brand of case is it?
Oh, Hornady cases.
Okay, something's wrong with the scales.
Oh,
Yeah, so 57 grains would still see it sitting way down in the case. So you're up around 65 grains.
oh, I'm glad you're talking now before I go blow myself up.
Yeah, it's a good thing, isn't it? Oh goodness me! Yeah, something's not quite right there. Are they? What kind of scales are they? What brand?
Well, it's the Hornady scale. I don't know what you call it.
It's a balance beam scale.
The balance beam scale, yeah.
Shit, they're a good scale. Normally a good scale, but then you say never say never with these things, eh? Yeah, we're gonna have to look right into that because 57. It's still, the powder's still sitting way down in the case. Like there's heaps and heaps of room there, but you just can't go much further because the pressures start coming up. But you get to about 58 or something like that, and then that's it. She's maxed out, doing about 2750 feet per second, something like that. Yeah, okay. And just otherwise, just check that the cases haven't got any fluff from your pockets or something like that in them. Just have a good look through and see what's going on. But gee, that is strange. Something's not quite right. The Hornady brass too. It's plenty of room in the case, so it's a good case to be working with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll reach out to Hardy on that because I'm glad we're talking.
Yeah, it's a good save, isn't it? Yeah. Right now, Chris. Chris would like to speak. Hello, Chris.
Unmute my microphone. Can you hear me now?
Only just.
Okay, right. I don't quite have the control. I'll sit a bit closer to it.
That's it. How are you, Chris?
Hi. So what it is the video sets, and I'm just going to soon get one. Don't want to do too much trying lots of different projectiles.
Yeah.
And I've had good success with the nozzle ballistic tip in 7mm08.
Yeah.
So I thought that might be what I'd start with, but there's maybe 165 sounds like a good size. But why is there 165 and 168 grain projectiles?
I think you'll find that it's part of that's marketing. It's just to try and encapsulate longer range markets because they made a few tweaks to the 168 grain. It's got a minor lift in BC. But otherwise, the two bullets are they're identical in construction. The jackets are exactly the same. The bases are exactly the same. So there's just a slight difference in form.
Okay.
But otherwise, they are identical. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Which one you go with? Sorry, what was the cartridge? A 3006.
3006.
Yeah. And what breed of rifle is it?
The Sarco 90.
Sarco
Hasn't
90.
arrived yet.
So you've got a little bit of magazine length to work with there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a number of different projectiles you could choose with. You could up the weight more if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You've got the E or the X and so forth. It just depends on what sized animals you're hunting and how you want to use the rifle. Yeah, I have found the 165 grain ballistic tip. It's good on on larger body animals, there's kind of a sort of a, how do I put it? It doesn't offload its energy very well because of the jacket thickness on very lean animals. So
Okay.
Sika, goats, chamois, that sort of carry on. You might get runners depending on fallow deer, how you know how big the animal is, and then it comes into its own on red and tar. You know that really there's enough resistance there to help peel that jacket back, so that works out quite well. And then as you get into larger animals again, if you wanted to, again, it depends on how far you want to use it and what you want to use it on. You know, sort of, yeah, dictates the bullet choice.
Yes, I think that with the 7mm and the ballistic tips, they break up really well, make a very large hole, so they're very good.
Yeah.
But I've used them in another caliber, and they didn't break up much at all, and it was, you got the runs, and it wasn't so good.
Yeah.
My idea is to try and cover some of those bigger animals at something like 400 metres, which the 7mm seemed to be didn't do quite so well.
Yeah, you'll definitely have the weight and the energy there for that, and at 400 it'll definitely fully expand and break up. So yeah, you'll get what you're looking for with that. But otherwise, the book series, the cartridges book, you'll see a lot more detail in there, you know, as to what to use for what. But yeah,
what about the ELDM and ELDX?
Yeah, well, they're covered in quite a lot of detail in the book series. So, have you read the book series at all?
I've read some, not the cartridge book.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, they're both options, and it's depending on how far you want to push it, you know, sort of inside 1800 feet per second. The ELDX is good, and it's also good for the larger animals. A 200 grain ELDX out of your 3006. So this, we're just talking about this before, I think it was with Glenn. Anyway, we just talked, oh no, with Rich. So he's wanting to run a 200 grain ELDX, so he's got a bit of an all-round cartridge, and that's a very fast expanding bullet, but the jacket is quite heavy. It runs into a heavier jacket, but it is very, very fast expanding. So, and then he has the weight, you know, so he's able to use weight for penetration, not construction so much, and make the most of that fast expansion. So it's a good all-rounder. But what he's also doing, he's trying to work out load techniques to give it quite high velocity. So with Superformance, for example, he may get up to 2700 feet per second. Well, most people would only get up to that with a 180 grain bullet, and some people might only, you know, do that with a 168 grain bullet. So so those load techniques can really help you exploit that 3006, and you can, you know, bring an old cartridge into this modern setting, and it's just an amazing cartridge. Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit of a journey. Just keep experimenting with it, and really enjoy it. It's a good one, because no matter if it doesn't work out, there's always going to be a projectile or some kind of, or a powder that's available, something you can do to exploit it. And you can't say that for all cartridges. You know, it's a fantastic thing. Yeah.
Just coming back to your comment about the fluted barrel swelling. I've never had a fluted barrel before, but this one you can't get a straight smooth barrel. You have to get a flute. What's the story with that? How many rounds before your barrel stretches out like a balloon or what?
Well, that's the old, how long is a piece of string? It's hard to say. It depends on the power of the cartridge. The magnums are more prone to doing it. Magnums can sometimes do it suddenly, but if you have a thin barrel that's fluted, it will slowly and steadily swell at the flutes. It's just a given. And then if you have a 1/2 inch or M12 muzzle thread on it, it will swell as well. M14 will swell, but more slowly. So, you know, that's one you can cut to 5/16 or M14, and sorry, 5/8. Bloody hell. Yeah, and then just, you know, you shoot it, and then once the accuracy starts to fall off, then you look at docking it just there. And so this is a problem in New Zealand. People they cut the barrels really, really short, and all that really does is it puts more. They cut them short because they want to suppress it, so that you're talking 16, 17 inches. But what that does, it puts more of the powder charge into the suppressor, and it puts more stress at the muzzle on the steel. But I mean, on the other side of it, if you cut right back, you can actually cut a decent muzzle thread. But you have to find that balance. There's just some utter stupidity in this country where they cut it. I mean, it is handy, that's short, and sometimes you do need a good short rifle. But with some of the larger cartridges and slower burning powders, cutting to such a short length, you're just putting extra strain inside the suppressor, you're putting more carbon in the chamber, and you're putting more strain on the muzzle as well. But yeah, fluting is a better idea in the larger barrel contours, but it's just, it doesn't, I mean, was it Glenn who was talking about his T3 light? I mean, there's just no need for fluting in it. It's light, you don't need it lighter than that. And yet Tika came out with a T3 fluted, and yeah. And then the other side of it is they can be finicky. The fin light was quite finicky. Yeah, a lot of trouble with that over the years. So
Okay, thanks for that.
Remington CDL was another one, really highly problematic. And sometimes the best way to deal with that one was to download it by about 200 feet per second. To run a heavy bullet and run it really slow.
Hi Nathan.
Hey Louis.
I had a question about sort of mentioned in your book. If I've done a bedding job, and I really like the bedding job, but I want to change barrels, does that mean you start over with the bedding job? You take it completely out and start again?
Try and float it, free float the barrel right down to the nocks, and just see if you can get away with it, and see how it goes. Hopefully, you'll get away with it.
So in that sense, so if you're getting it rebarreled, would you get the knocks matched to what you had previous?
You can never get it perfect because, yeah, I mean, you can get it close to. You can try, like True Flight, for instance, they will try and get it as close as they can, but you've always got that final bead blasting, of course, that's going to just change those last tolerances. But what True Flight will do is they'll machine it to the tolerance it was before, and then after bead blasting, it's slightly under that tolerance. And then hopefully that will fit into your bedding nicely. And sometimes it does work out well, but other times you do end up having to free float. In some cases, when you're free floating on that second barrel, if you don't remove the entire bedding, you just remove some of it, so you end up with kind of a half moon of bedding material left behind, but you've got a gap of a couple of millimeters, something like 80 thou or something like that. It still acts as a reinforcer for the stock and helps to stop the foring from flexing so much. So that can, especially in the plastic stock rifles, that can actually still provide some advantages even if you did have to free float. But yeah, otherwise it's just a matter of experimenting and seeing how you get on. Yeah, and if you feel that you do have to, at that point too, I should mention, let's say you put the new barrel on and it's shooting, let's say 3/4 of an inch, and it's like 2 in one hole and one's very small flyer, then yeah, you might want to go through and rebed the whole thing just to try and take it down that final notch if reloading hasn't worked and so forth. But if the new rifle is shooting, say 2 inches, something like that, well, that dampening at the nocks isn't really going to help that much, because there's probably some larger problem there. Yeah, so it's sort of horses for courses too. It depends on the weight of the barrel, how much strain you're putting on it. If you're running a 28, 32 inch barrel and you're putting huge amounts of strain on your action screws, well, then maybe you want to go to a full rebed. But if you're running it like a 22 to 24 inch sporter, well, chances are it'll be just fine fully floated. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yep.
Yeah, so it's just, you don't want to create extra work for yourself if you can help it, eh? That's the big one.
Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Bill.
First off, thanks for having it. Been a fan of yours for a long time. I got a 308 that was really drilled. It's Model 70. And about a month ago, it started coming out of accuracy here,
Okay.
and it's exhibiting some pretty extreme velocity spreads and standard deviations. And it's a
Okay.
known good load. I broke down the ammo, redid it, and exhibited the same thing. I'm kind of scratching my head. I was thinking maybe it was a firing pin problem.
Could be, yeah. Well, mainspring, yeah, the mainsprings can go after a while. That's actually a bloody good topic for everyone. It's something we don't think about. And Richard, with that Superformance especially, it likes a strong mainspring. And you'll end up with velocity spreads of about 100 feet per second if the spring's getting weak. So it's harder for us here in New Zealand, but in the States it's not so bad. It does pay to have spare springs and not overpowered springs, because they can actually bind in the inside the bolt body, you know, on the edges. The springs can bind, so they're not always the best. But original, so you know, new, but factory weight, so you're about 24-pound springs, and then a tool for disassembling your bolt to get the spring off. That helps a lot. So yes, definitely look into that, and I would go through Wolf or Midway, whichever way you can go, and yeah, and maybe have a look at all that. So I mean, with your firing pin, you can do that through visual inspection, but the spring, of course, you can't. You'll never know. But they do wear down. You know, they do. If they're left cocked all the time, they lose their strength, and then the ES goes all over the show. But the other side of it is to just check your copper fouling, that sort of carry on. Make sure that there's no heavy buildup of carbon or copper fouling in there. So you want to get right in there with a bronze brush and good copper solvent, and get all of that out, and then look across the muzzle if you can, if you don't have a bore scope, and just make sure you're getting all of that copper out. Actually, sometimes you will get copper further down that you can't see at the muzzle, so a bore scope is very useful. But otherwise, just use long periods of soaking, like, you know, scrub, soak, leave for an hour, and then scrub again. You do it for a half a day or a whole day, and then yeah, make sure all that's out. And then for carbon, probably the best product for carbon is calcium lime rust. It's amazing how well that works, especially for guns with suppressors. And that just comes from hardware stores, CLR, and just dip a rag in that, just a tiny amount, and then swab the bore and the chamber, especially that chamber and neck. And then once everything's back to square one, fire a few fouling shots, especially for an older rifle, and then see how you go. But yes, mainspring, that's a really good topic. That's when I next do an edition of accurizing and maintenance, there'll be a section there just to reiterate, check that, and also, if you can, have spares of those items long term.
Maybe you got some insight that I haven't been able to find online other than just generalizations.
Yeah.
As you probably know, about 80% of nozzler bullets have been like non-existent for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
And more specifically, I mean, I go back a long ways. I started using nozzler like 30, 40 years ago, the partitions.
Yeah.
Because that was the go-to bullet back then, and I just use it in several of my loads.
Yeah.
For instance, the 7mm 175 grain nozzle partition has like been absolutely non-existent. I can't even find it in the black market for at least 2 years now. Do you have any insights into what's going on at Nozzler? That like 80% of the bullets are just never been there for the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, yeah, there were two things. They decided to move their plant and upgrade their plant right when we went into lockdowns and everyone went into panic buying mode. And so they got well behind. And I'm not sure what military contracts. A lot of these manufacturers have also got military contracts at the moment. But that was the big one, just shifting the plant right at the time when people started panic buying. And so since then, they've only been able to make the most popular calibers and most popular bullets. They're just trying to keep up with that. So if you're shooting 375 or 35 Wheeling or whatever, you basically shit out of luck. And of course, the AccuBond was really, really popular. They marketed it quite well. So that's the one they're trying to keep up with. And the partition's kind of been left by the wayside. Yeah. So that's where they're at. I don't know how long it'll take them to catch up, but they've got bugger all on their own shelves, let alone what retailers have got.
Very well. Thanks for the insight. Maybe you could help me out a little bit. I've been holding off using my 7mm Weatherby Magnum. I
Okay.
know the Remington 7mm is the most popular, but I mean, I go back a long ways, and the 7mm Weatherby has been a real nice rifle for me.
Yeah.
And I've been using the 7mm 175 grain partition, which is, again, non-existent, has
Yeah.
been so. Do you have a different bullet maybe you could recommend that would be equally as good as the partition? I know there's several other
It's actually hard.
varieties out there.
Yeah, it is hard to find that exact performance. It is hard to duplicate it. What size animals are you talking about and what ranges?
Oh, here in Colorado, elk's the big thing. So, and then, secondary deer, but I mean, primarily we all focus on elk, and that's where.
And what kind of
Right.
ranges do you want to shoot to?
The older I get, the less range I feel comfortable with. I have done 300-yard shots in the past, but I try to throttle myself back in more recent years where I'm getting more elderly, to trying to stay within 200 yards or thereabouts at the most.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, based on that, there's probably a number of premium bullets you could use because you've got the velocity. So you're always going to be, if you're keeping your ranges short, you're always going to have hydraulic force. I mean, you don't really even need much bullet weight shedding action. Yeah, because you've just got so much speed there. So you could run a mono if you wanted to, but otherwise, yeah, I guess there's a few different premiums you could, like a bonded, you know what I mean, like an AccuBond or something like that.
Yeah, I use AccuBond on my one of my other rifles that does real well. So I was thinking maybe going to AccuBond. 'Cause like you say, they're focusing their manufacturing in those kind of areas.
Yeah, if you can get your hands
and
on that,
so
yeah. AccuBond, it's a bit of a, it's not the greatest bullet to use at very long ranges because even though the jacket is quite thin, the bonding does inhibit that energy offloading. But if you're not going to be using it at really long ranges, well, then that'll probably do you just fine. I mean, it will peel right back when you're using it. I mean, you're up around 3,000, 3.1 with a 180 grain sort of thing, and or 175 grain, and 3.2 with a 160, 168 grain around there. So you've got some speed behind you. It's pretty hard on the bullet. Yeah.
what do you think about ELDX in a 7mm Weatherby mag?
Yeah, just as long as you run the 175 grain, yeah, it will break right up. It's not going to be like the partition. It will break right up, but it will get the job done. It'll get the job done. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I'll try both of those because I can't not use that rifle anymore just because I can't get the 7mm partition 175. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
A lot of so I've had this ongoing for the last few years with this partition business, and what I've been advising a lot of my guys is to go back to the Spear hot core because it was simply readily available. It's cheap. It's not popular. Nobody's interested in it, but it shoots really, really well. It sheds weight, so it does offload some energy, but its bonding is strong enough to actually get the bullet to reach through to the vitals. So you sort of never too far wrong with that bullet. It's not the perfect bullet, or even no bullet really is, but it does. The bonding is, although it's light, it will ensure the bullet reaches the vitals. And so I've been passing that along, and a lot of guys have been going back to it, and they are more than happy with it. So in that sense too, you've also got the 160 grain hot core. It's a wonderful bullet. It really is. It really is a wonderful bullet, but it will lose a lot of weight on elk. You're going to end up with a 70, 80 grain projectile. So yeah, it just at the moment it's a case of, yes, this bullet or that bullet would be ideal, but it's what you can get your hands on. And powder as well, it's the same thing, you know. You could load the cartridge like this or this, but hey, I can only get hold of X powder. Well, then you got to just make the most of it. Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm running to, is that I got a hodgepodge mess of different bullets and everything, and I try to test this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was going to ask. I'm reloading one rifle in particular, 280 Ackley improved,
Oh, yep.
and it's a tack driver. It's way better than I am, but
Good.
was hoping to get some advice on if I was to really just try to search for one bullet that could do a lot of what I need. That would be hugely helpful in development and to, you know, just really practice with that one round. But so with that being said, I've been shooting burger bullets. I've had great results as far as accuracy.
Mhm.
I've only shot a couple animals and everything's went down, but that's all within a couple hundred yards.
Yeah.
And I would like to reach out to 500 plus sometime.
Yeah.
And with availability issues and everything like that aside, is there, I know it sounds like you're a proponent of the ELDX, the Hornady line, you said Spear. Is there one in particular, if you were to have a choice going out into the field, that you would lean toward?
What animals are you targeting?
Just like Glenn, it'd be probably elk would be the largest frame, and then
Yeah, okay. So you need to, your bullet needs to be slightly softer than his, slightly, but you need lots of weight. Although, yeah, it's with a 7mm, the ELDM is possibly, well, depending on how far you want to reach, but it's a little bit too soft, you know. It's, yeah, I mean, you could try the 180 grain ELDM, but yeah, this is a tough one because you're wanting to hunt a large animal and you want to be able to tackle it in close and out long, all with one load. In close, you want the bullet to hold together, but out long, you don't have much bullet weight for that size animal. You want it to offload as much energy as it possibly can. You don't have speed to do that via hydraulic force, so you have to actually do it you've got to offload that kinetic energy via weight shedding. So you're probably still looking at that ELDX type bullet. Yeah, and I hate harping on about those bullets because it sounds like I'm just some kind of Hornady fanboy. I'm not. I'm really not. But
yeah.
I don't like the direction things are going where there's always this marketing, focusing on whatever's popular and just pushing all this shit continuously. And it's like, well, hey, wait up, we've got guys here who can't get bullets for their whatever, you know. How about just focusing on these guys, or how about just a heavy bullet for a 6.5 rather than 10 use 6.5 and 6mm and 25 caliber cartridges? How about just getting back to your roots?
Yeah.
So I do get annoyed with all of that, and yet at the same time, I'm extremely grateful to them. I'm thankful, for all that they've done so far and what they've given us. So, that's how it is.
Yeah. So
It's what's your maximum range you want to shoot to?
I mean, on one rifle that doesn't kick, and I want to shoot out to 1,200 yards. But I think eventually I would like to reach out and be able to hit a deer at 800 yards eventually. But that's not now necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. Try focusing on the ELDX for now.
Okay.
It's going to be it's either going to be the 162 or 175, depending on how it shoots. But do entertain the idea of a 30 caliber. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a tough one because the 280 is just so efficient at this time. Powders are hard to come by, bullets, all that, and you can make one shot count so well with the 280 because there's less wind drift. It doesn't kick much. If you do your part, you can use a very small number of rounds to achieve a really good result. A little bit of practice goes a long way, but you don't have to have heaps of practice. So it really does pay dividends. But Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
The-
No, and like I said, out long range, I wouldn't expect elk. I'm not trying to do that, but
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, it's just
you know,
the more weight you have to begin with, the more weight you can afford to lose. Therefore, the weaker the construction can be. Therefore, the more there is to offload. So, yeah. But anyway, I wouldn't be using the burger because just the way that it's drawn. By the time the material reaches the tip, it's actually thicker than it is through the body, right at the tip. So yeah, you're into very poor expansion. Yeah.
yes, okay,
And also, I've been cutting up all of their bullets, going back through the whole lot recently, and I find that there's errors in their marketing with that they talk about target bullets having a thick jacket and hunting bullets having a thin jacket. I've pulled them all apart, and I've gotten more than just one sample as well, like across the years and batches, and that it's things aren't quite as they advertise. So the jackets are the jackets are okay initially, but it's the drawing process and the form that narrow form which is a real limiting factor. If they wanted to optimize them, they could, but they'd have to leave the tip more open, more like a Game King hollow point, Sierra Game King hollow point, or put a plastic tip on it like the ELDM, and that would change things around a bit. But as things are, it's actually it's not ethical. I mean, I can understand they were doing so well with target stuff, and then some people use them for hunting, even myself, and then you started to see good results, but then going further ahead with it, it's like, well, no, this isn't good. It's not working, and yeah, something needs to change.
and then along with that, I've heard mention of super performance powder
Yeah.
several times. Is that kind of your go-to? It seems.
I wouldn't call it a go-to. It's something I experiment with, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And that was one thing. Ignition is a big deal. You've got to have ignition right, and bore conditions have to be right. The bore friction has to be right. If it's not, the ES is really high, and it's just no good. But when it works out really well, and it can produce quite amazing speeds. Just more so because of its bulk density. It's not some super duper burn rate. The burn rate's about the same as H1000 around there, but it's just the powder kernels are a lot smaller. But yeah, I mean, for yourself, probably Reloader 22 would give you a bit of spice in your life. ES and that can be a bit high too. And again, I wrote about it in the books. I said, I wasn't that impressed with it. And other people were saying the same things, it's sensitive to temperature and so forth. But actually, if you bloody well address that mainspring, it can actually sweeten it right up. So, I did those in deliberate tests just to see what would happen, and both powders actually responded quite well to that. So yeah, you could have a little bit of a play with that and see how you get on. Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, did I hear you say moving up caliber, you would jump up to a 50 cal for out to 800? Is that right?
If I just think about going up into the 30 caliber just to get that bullet weight up. It's a tough one because if you go up to 30 caliber, you've got to go that
You
much.
said 30 caliber, right?
30 caliber, yeah. Yeah, you've got to go that much faster though to get the trajectory, to get the ballistics that you're getting now. So it's a bit of a tough call. If you do go up there, you've actually got to go up quite a step to get to match what you're doing now. But I mean, sometimes that's what you have to do. Yeah.
338 Lapua would be a one to consider possibly.
Yeah, it's just unless you get to the other side of it where the rifles start getting so big and heavy, depending on how the rifle's configured, you start walking around with a small portable cannon. So, and the overall lengths, they're getting huge. If only Hornady would have made it just a 250 grain ELDM just to keep it sort of, just something a little bit smaller. But yeah, 338 is, it's always been a go-to for elk, and with good reason. But even the SST is quite quite a good bullet. You know, the 225 grain, it does break up, but yeah, you can do that with a 30 caliber these days. 220 grain ELDX. So yeah, just have a little bit of a think about maybe, but not yet. Just see how you get on,
Yep.
and then look to maybe 30 caliber a Magnum 225 grain ELDM and 220 grain ELDX, just sort of playing around with that. Yeah, but for the ranges you're wanting to shoot to, you need a lot of velocity. So you're starting to look at barrel burners. It just depends on where you're at. You know, you can sort of go through that phase, and then you come out the other side and think, oh shit, I just want a 30-06 now. And come back to something that's in the middle that'll take those big bullet weights and, you know, do well at 600 or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's once you've been into that 280, it's hard to move away from it because it's just so efficient, you know.
It's fun to shoot, and
Oh, yeah.
it's comfortable. But it's way better than me, and I think it makes, I don't know, you do your part, and it makes you look pretty good.
Yeah, it does too. It really, really does. I wrote in that Tactical tomfoolery article. I can go out with a 308 and just make an absolute fool of myself some days, you know. The wind gets up and it's just all over the show. And if you haven't been practicing a lot or something, it's just like, oh shit, you know. So yeah, I know what you mean. You go to the 280 and it's just, whoo, look at me. Aren't I great? Oh shit, yeah.
I appreciate it.
Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, hopefully I've got the microphone sorted now.
Yep.
You talk about the ELDM, which is supposedly made as a target bullet.
Yeah.
This might be a really basic question, but what's the difference between the ELDMs and the ELDX?
Jacket thickness.
So will the ELDM sort of shred up into little pieces?
Yes. Yeah. The ELDM is much more like the VMAX. So it's quite a bit thinner than the ELDX, and the ELDX and SST share the same jacket. So the ELDM is 20 thou, and the ELDX and SST runs at about 30 to 32 thou, depending on the exact bullet.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of difference there. Yeah, and so it's sort of a horses for courses game. Not one. There's no one is better than the other. It just depends on what you're doing. And then there's a limit with the ELDX as to how far you can use it because of that. Yeah, because before expansion starts to become limited, and you start to see that between 1800 and 1600 feet per second, it starts to decrease. This is the ELDX, decrease in performance depending on what it's hitting. Yeah. So.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I got a question, Nathan, for you.
Yeah, who am I speaking to?
This is Dusty.
Dusty, how you going?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you?
Good, thanks, good.
So I recently bought a chronograph and just doing some mode development.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things that you start getting some numbers and now I'm getting a bit confused.
Yeah.
So just with the 223,
Okay.
I did some mode development with a benchmark 2.
Oh, yeah.
And just some deep soft points to plink around and shoot some goats.
Yeah.
The first group I shot, it was 0.356,
Mm-hmm.
and then it slowly started to open up, and I was stoked with that. But then that's now probably one of my worst extreme spreads at 30, and then kind of the halfway point, it really starts, the extreme spread starts to shrink, but then the group starts to open up.
Yeah,
Is
that does happen.
Mod shooting or?
No, that does happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't care about the numbers, I care about the groups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the numbers are important depending on how far you want to shoot, aren't they? I mean, it's just horses, it's all relative.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so the cause of it could be the barrel itself is just, finicky in that way. That could be the metallurgy, the temper of it, but it could also be the internal finish of the barrel can be a part of that. And then it could be your hand loads, the neck tension, and of course neck tension is tricky because if you have a really tight neck, then what tends to happen is when you seat the bullet, it gets wonky, and it goes out, it loses concentricity as you're trying to seat it. So You don't want too
Yeah.
much tension, but if you've got too little tension, which can happen with the Lee collet die set with the mandrel, if the mandrel doesn't produce enough tension, then you know, that can also lead to a high ES as well. So there can be, you know, a number of reasons for it. Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, and once you get into long range, of course, people just start chasing it left, right, and centre. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I was shooting with my 308 that you helped me a bit with, and that's the 18-inch barrel with 206H.
Yep.
And I think I got to 44.7 grains
Yep.
and started to get extractor swipe marks,
Okay.
but I was getting pretty decent groups, like I think it was, I don't know, maybe 0.6 of an inch, something like that.
Yeah.
Would you keep it there or drop it back down?
It's odd that it, like normally the groups will start to open up at about, so 44.5, some will have a sweet spot there, and then after that, most will start to show pressure.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to be going over 44.5, but in a lot of cases, the rifles will handle it. You know, there's no, you know, the brass will last and so forth. So if you're starting to see extractor marks, I would look at the branded brass for a start, because there's a lot of this ADI stuff floating around. Another Lapua is another one. There's the cases are a bit thicker than the US brass, and so you do reach those pressures sooner. Then if you're running an 18-inch and it's got a suppressor on it, I'd be getting it stuck into it with the calcium lime rust and making sure all that carbon's out of there. And then otherwise, there's always anomalies, like again, scales. You know, we don't quite know what scales calibration is. You might be, you know, closer to 45 grains for all I know, you know. But yeah, generally speaking, the sweet spot is 40. So what bullet weight are you running? Sorry, I didn't even freaking ask. That was silly.
168.
Yeah, that's I made that assumption. I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So generally speaking, the sweet spot is around 43.5. So when you're testing, so if I'm wanting to just isolate a barrel and I just want to study the barrel, I don't care about anything else. I'm actually just, you know, studying different variables of polishing or something like that, finish, tolerances, whatever. I'll go 42, 42.5, 43, 43.5, 44. So where is that? 42.5, sorry, 43, 43.5, 44. And I'll just keep going around and around, and I won't even change the seating depth. I'll just keep doing that. So let's say bedding as well. If I just want to study the effect of different styles of bedding on a rifle, I'll just keep cycling around and around and around there. And doing that, I know that I'm not going to be too far wrong. And it's usually somewhere within there. And then at the end, if I do actually want to just sweeten it up that last little bit, from say 0.6 down to 0.3, like I'm actually just looking to accurize the rifle, then I might just tweak the seating depth a little bit and play around with that sort of thing. So if the magazine's long, like the Bagara has got a slightly longer magazine, the detachable, then I can seat out to say 72 millimeters. But if it's a short, you know, magazine, then I'll go in, I'll seat it, you know, 40,000 a millimeter shorter than you normally would. So.
I've just got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I've got a 6.5 Swede, and I'm currently using the 140 VLDMs.
Yeah.
And I got tempted with the Burger marketing for the VLDs with the promise of more accuracy.
Yeah.
By the sounds of things, the jackets might make it a bit unpredictable there.
Very, very unpredictable. Yeah. Yeah. Not a good call. Yeah. Not for hunting, that's for real.
Yeah. Have you seen, is there much accuracy to be gained there, or is stuff all really?
No. I mean, again, that's relative. Either the rifle's accurate or it's not, you know. It just depends on the rifle, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, there's minor things they can do to the form to try and make it, you know, enhance accuracy within the bore. But otherwise, it just comes down to the rifle. I mean, the 6.5 by 55 too. You can't really make a statement like that for a rifle like that, because the throat design's 1894. It's a half degree lead. It's got no bearing on modern projectile design. So, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. Sorry, that was a very garbled reply.
Oh, that answers the question. Just another one I have
Yeah.
is I've got a Sarko 75 with the wooden stock,
Yeah.
and I was looking at bedding. Do you recommend putting pillars in it?
Yeah, just for longevity of the rifle. Yeah, I do. It's you want to sort of keep a hold of that rifle too, because they you know, that's closer to the original Sarko rifle. And it still has its own recoil lug on it, and it's a little bit easier to deal with when you're when you're bedding it. It's a little bit easier to work with. But yeah, if you can, just some 3/8 rod, 3/8 aluminium tube or stainless tube, cut to size. Yeah, and you can bed over that. But when you're bedding that rifle, you do have to watch for pinch points with it. So I've gone over that in the anchorizing book. I might also have instructions for that on the website, I think. But yeah, there's a few little traps with that one, but you can soon work through it. It's not that big a deal.
Can you give an update on your bedding materials? Is there any, are you going to be shipping those to the United States, or is it still kind of an export problem?
It's still a problem. We need an importer who is willing to buy it by the cubic meter, because we have to ship surface. So yeah, we basically need an importer who's into it and wants to give it a go. Yeah, we can't. We were in the beginning we were doing it air freight, and there used to be a thing called accepted quantities dangerous goods, and so that would allow smaller items that were something that was dangerous in a large quantity, but if packed in a small quantity was not dangerous. That was considered accepted quantities, of course, and that helped smaller businesses. And it said that in the literature for that when they made that ruling, it was to actually help the little guy. But of course, the couriers nowadays, they just, and the airlines, there's just so much going on. They just make blanket statements now. So, and then I think, well, I'm not sure, but also because it had the little rifle on it and it was gun related, I think that sort of made it a bit more difficult. But yeah, we can surface ship. We just need to find an importer, and yeah. So sorry about that, but it may still be a little while. The last 4 years, of course, has just been so crazy. So.
No, 100%. Appreciate it. I'm down to my last kit.
Oh, shivers.
Anthony, I have one other quick question for you.
Yeah.
Right, so my partner, she has shot my 308.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's a strong woman and stuff like that. But she's a lefty and she wants to get her own rifle. But she wants to get a 223, and I'm kind of wanting to steer her to that 308 or something a bit bigger.
Yeah.
But it's only pretty much Tika that you can get in Taranaki here for lefties. What would you recommend for downloading the 308 or something like that, so it's a little bit easier on her?
I've just done a tutorial a few weeks ago with the shepherdess, and she was shooting a 308 Tika, and shit, it was a great day. It was such a cool day. She did so well with that rifle.
Yeah.
So how did it go? So she got the rifle. She got everyone talked to her about, do this, do that. Put her bloody wrong. She came here, she was a little bit nervous. I think also nervous about just another guy, talking at her with all this bullshit information. So she came in, got the rifle on the bench, got it clean, got all the shit out of the barrel, pulled it apart, set the trigger. The triggers on the Tikas at the moment aren't quite as good as they were. Sometimes they need just a little bit of work, just a tiny bit of work. And then adjusted it, put it back together, got it down to the range. And so that rifle had a 4-end overmold on it. So that's what I would suggest. And other than that, it was just standard T3 light. But that one did have a suppressor on it. It was cut back. If you were going to cut it back, you wouldn't want to cut it back more than, say cut it to 20 inches and go with an M14 thread. But other than that, just leave it as it is. This should still take an M14 thread. So, I mean, that's easy. But if she doesn't want the muffler on it, then as you said, you can download it, but get that 4-end overmold on if you'd like, because that does make the rifle a lot easier to handle, even with the feminine hands. Yeah, and then for downloading, just again use your 2206 and just go backwards with it. The bullet will still work really well out to several hundred yards, and she will be so happy with it. She won't be happy with the 223. She'll be happy with it for a little bit. There'll be a honeymoon period, and she'll curse the damn thing.
Would you ever go down to like a 130 grain pull, or no?
Well, you could do. I mean, of course you could do. You go 110 VMAX if you want to, but there's just no need because you'll see that 168 grain you're using, even if you were to load it right down to 2200 feet per second, so that's 30-30 speeds, like absolutely the same as a 30-30. But you've got this fairly flat trajectory, but she'll find it fine. I mean, she might be on that just for the morning, and then she's up to 24 or 26, and if it's suppressed, I mean, she can go to full power straight away. Yeah, so left-handed ticker, yeah, that's pretty good. Just go for it. If Steph's out in the paddock digging holes at the moment somewhere, but Steph would thoroughly recommend it. Yeah, she'd try and steer clear of this. So a lot of guys that shoot 223, they talk so much shit, man. Well, they talk about shooting swags of goats and this sort of carry on, and oh well, I use accuracy and all that, and they don't. They shoot them in the face, they shoot them here and there, and then you go out into the hills and you're having to finish them off. You know, it's just shit. So yeah, it's a good 223 works quite well if you know what you're doing, but it can just go terribly wrong as well if conditions aren't right. So
yeah, I shot a big stag last weekend in the Prioras, and I was with my 308, and I was thinking, I'm so glad I didn't grab my 223 because there was no way I would never have found it.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely a fan of the 308, and
yeah.
Right now, if you have a partner who's semi-interested in rifles and wants to get one, I'm more than happy to help flourish this and all that.
Yeah, just if you can, maybe if she has a go with yours and has a bit of a play with it, and just it's about being able to get that kill, regardless of whether the shot is good or bad, because perfect shot placement, I mean, you try for it, but it just doesn't always happen. You know, it really doesn't. Yeah, so just getting that bullet weight, and it's just as simple as weight times speed equals kinetic energy, and that's all there is to it. Yeah. And then, you can separate your brass, like you could run, say, Federal for her, Hornady for you, or Winchester for her, Hornady for you, something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very easy to just keep them separated. Hey, Magnus!
Hello, Nathan.
How are you?
I managed to squeeze in a few minutes here in between battles at home, you know?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting conversation I just dropped in on, because a friend of mine is considering a 223.
Okay.
And what I'm curious about is what factory rifles have a magazine length more than 62 millimeters or so? Because that's what I've been storming in on. There's some, isn't it 57.5?
Yeah. Probably the ticker. You can still modify the ticker. You have a play with that, but otherwise everyone has been going shorter and shorter. Like the Hauer, they've gone to the Mini. So that if you can find an older Hauer rifle or Weatherby Vanguard, that's the ultimate, because you can muck around with that magazine and get it quite long. But the ticker, it's got that plastic block, and if you take the block away, there is a bit of fiddling involved to make sure it actually still feeds okay. So you want to do it with a spare magazine, not the actual factory magazine. But otherwise, I'm not sure.
And also, I guess the bolt stop is the same as the 308, so you can just
file it back as much as you want. Yeah.
I probably don't have to touch the bolt stop.
No, you won't need to touch it. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, fairly straightforward. And of course, with the ticker, you get to pick your twist rate as well. So, or you used to be able to. Yeah. So. Yeah, so you can get a relatively fast twist rate with a ticker.
Interesting, because around here, of course, all those other models are probably rare as hen's teeth,
Yeah.
so ticker is probably the way to go.
Yeah, that's right. I actually haven't really looked too much into aftermarket magazines for the 223 and the ticker. I'm more used to them in the larger calibers. So yeah, that might be worth looking into as well. Just see what kind of aftermarket magazines steel magazines are available. You might be able to find something a bit longer, but who knows? Yeah, but either way, there's always a way to modify them. Yeah, just takes a bit of mucking around is all.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, no, you're
Just
most
stay in
welcome.
the background, maybe I'll pop in later.
Yeah, okay.
Cheers.
No worries, Magnus. We'll see you later.
Cheers.
Cool.
Hey Nathan, this is Jordan from Alaska. I had a quick question about your 7mm practical and whether you thought it made sense to run a reamer through a factory Remington 9 1/4 barrel or just rebarrel. I don't know what experience you've had with that.
It depends on how cheaply you can get away with it. If a gunsmith will do it on the cheap for you, then yeah, go for it. Yeah, it's why not? You know what I mean? You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I do that myself. If I've got one there, I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, then we'll go to a new barrel. But if you can get away with it, then that's fine. Yeah, it's just a bit of mucking around, making sure you've got to get that barrel, the factory barrel off and into the lathe. But the good thing is if you're chucking it in the forge drawer, you don't have to be too perfect with it, because the reamer is going to follow the existing chamber anyway, as long as it's got a floating reamer holder. So it's just a matter of making sure you've got the headspace right, and away you go, really. So yeah, it's not too big of a drama. It's just whether or not it's worth it or not. It's good for a Sendero barrel or a longer Remington barrel, but yeah, I don't know about some of the shorter barrels. Not so good, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I picked up one of the pre-bankruptcy Remington long ranges that has that stainless 26.
Yeah.
And I got it for a good deal, specifically for a practical build.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, I'd kind of been hanging on wondering whether, it was even worth trying with that twist rate. So,
the twist rate's fine. Yeah, you can. Yeah, that particular rifle does actually go well when reamed straight to practical. You just lose a little wee bit of BC way out long, and I'm talking out 1,000 yards out around there, but that's all. You just lose a little wee bit of BC. It doesn't affect it in any other way, So
that's it would be a hunting rifle as well, so not looking for 1,600-yard shots, mainly sheep, goats, black bears, and stuff up here in the mountains. So.
Yeah, do it. So there'll be a slight step, about a thou step midway down the neck, where it didn't completely wash out the old neck, but it's so unnoticeable. It's meaningless. So, I mean, you get a step if you're using reading dies. You'll still get a step of the neck anyway. So there's this little wee bit of a step there. But otherwise, no, it's fine. Twist rate's fine. You have a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, cool. No worries, Jordan.
Got a small thing.
Yeah,
Small question, right on the verge of the end of everything. Walter barrels, Walter.
Yeah.
I've had like a 50-50 success rate with them. Does anybody share that experience? They are, some of them shoot like perfect, and then other ones just suck. And that's with rifles with several barrels, so you can really eliminate bedding issues and that kind of stuff, Because the rifle will shoot well with another barrel, but not that one, so on. So it's like roughly 50-50 out of the 15-20 barrels I've tried between myself and my friends over the last few years.
Yeah, the company's been passed down a bit. It's changed hands. And so the original barrel maker, I mean, that was bloody years ago. So he's long gone. But are these barrels producing fouling or not? Copper fouling?
Not tremendously much. I've tried different types of lapping or not lapping and whatever, and it doesn't seem to make a huge difference.
Yeah,
Really.
because there's two ways. A company can go downhill. Barrel making company could go downhill in quality, but then there's the other side of it where a barrel making company tries too hard, and I find that is just as detrimental. So if they are really chasing high finishes and these latest techniques, that can be equally detrimental. So it's really hard to say, and it's hard on them because they're doing their best, and you come along and say, no, that's just no good. But that is happening these days. So yeah, it just.
If you look at the price point and all that, I find it hard to understand how they can make any money out of it. So
Yeah, okay.
my guess is that they've been dropping in quality because they have this solid reputation from older days.
Yeah,
But,
way back. Yeah.
but I'm starting to wonder if it's that reputation comes from the opinion of the average Joe who is satisfied with 1.5 MOA or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it, when that happens? Yeah.
Anyway, my last build was Lilja in 7mm Ram mag, one in 8 twist actually.
Okay.
And yeah, just an experiment. And it's really the most forgiving barrel I've ever had.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no matter what I put in it, it's like sub 1.2 MOA, and usually most bullets can go sub 0.7 thereabouts. So
Good.
next build will also be a Lilja barrel.
Yeah, okay, good. Fantastic.
Good job.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, guys, I think that's just about it, huh? Thank you guys for coming along and having a chat, and I'll try and time it better next time and maybe look at a topic, but maybe you guys let me know what you think about that too.
Take care, man.
Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it.
See us.